So this session, a use case-based approach to G Suite security, it's a little different. We barely have a few slides up top, and 95% of the session is going to be all demos. So hopefully, you can take some of these demos back and implement them when you go back to your G Suite instances. Great. So often we see customers suffer due to cyber attacks. We know that email continues to be the #1 attack vector, with 91% of attacks starting with a phishing email. And we've seen a tremendous increase in ransomware over the past couple of years, with it increasing by about 15x over the past 2 years. Now, every 40 seconds, business is hit by a ransomware attack. The thing is that often admins don't really have the right security controls to manage these situations, and attackers keep changing tactics, so it becomes really hard. And beyond that, users also need the right controls, because at the end of the day, if you're a few admins managing a workforce of more than a couple of thousand people, it's really hard to do that. So unless we make users part of that whole security ecosystem, it can't scale. That's where G Suite can help. It's a pure native cloud solution, which can help you enhance your security as well as collaboration. Now, we started in the cloud, and that's why we understand the security implications of working in the cloud. The protections we've built at Google every day, which we use every day, are the same protections we have for G Suite. As an example, in security, scale matters. It matters a lot. Now, every minute, we detect about 10 million spam messages. We prevent about 10 million spam messages from reaching Gmail inboxes, and about 700,000 web pages are indexed every minute. Now, how do we use this information? We use this to figure out the right signals to feed into our machine learning models, and they get better over time. So we get better over time at predicting attacks and making sure we stop those threats from reaching inboxes. Now, with respect to G Suite, I want to talk about 3 things. The first one being reducing risk with intelligent insights. On average, admins get about 5,000 alerts every day, and almost half of them are never looked at. And we want to change that with G Suite. We introduced the Alert Center last year, and with that, we're surfacing some of the most important insights to your inbox to make sure that the stuff which you really need to work on is right there in front of you, instead of those 5,000 alerts. The second thing is about proactive protections. At the end of the day, when you unbox G Suite, you want a lot of those protections to be on by default. You should not have to go into 20 different configurations to figure out which protections you have on. And we do believe in the idea that these protections should be on from an admin perspective, but also from a user perspective, so that users can become part of that security journey. As an example, we have about 99.9% accuracy in preventing spam and business email compromise attacks from coming into your enterprise. And with security keys, once we've had security key deployments, we've had 0 reported or detected hijacked accounts after security key deployments. The last thing is simplicity. At the end of the day, no matter how good a feature is, if it is not deployed, it's kind of useless, and we want to not have that. So we do pay a lot of emphasis on making sure that the stuff we're doing within G Suite from a security perspective is very simple. Now, how do we tie these things together? You're going to see a lot of demos today. They're going to be based on different use cases. But here's an example of what you could do when you go back in terms of tying these different use cases together. So imagine a successful organization. You have a lot of employees joining in every day. And it's really hard to make sure that the employees are onboarded correctly. Now, we have advanced mobile management with profiles which needs to be installed on devices. And with those profiles, you get a lot of controls on the device. You can push apps, you can take apps off, just the regular whole MDM thing. But beyond that, if you have a lot of new users joining every day, even without users having to install profiles, you should be able to get basic control on the device, things like being able to wipe an account or being able to enforce a passcode. And we have that with this default on mobile management, which we'll demo in a bit. Next up is advanced anti-phishing. A lot of advanced anti-phishing features that we have are turned on by default. We launched a few new features today morning, and those are again going to be turned on by default. Beyond that, though, for a certain group of users, you should definitely have security keys installed. We did announce the idea of having an Android phone as a security key today morning, and we'll talk about that a little later as well. Now, once you have done all this stuff, you still might want to make sure that data is not getting exfiltrated outside the organization. And for that, we have the Security Center. And we're going to be taking an example of a case where we'd use the Security Center to prevent data exfiltration. And then we will also be demoing Vault, which is an e-discovery solution, which helps legal and compliance team around making sure that the retention policies and the archiving policies within your organization are correctly configured. So with that, I'm going to move over to the demo screen. The first demo we have is going to be around the organizational policies which you, when you unbox G Suite, what are the right policies which you should be setting? So this is the G Suite admin console, and I'm logged into the device management part. This is the MDM console. Now, I talked briefly about MDM on by default, which is our agentless version of MDM. Again, it's great if you want advanced MDM, and we have that, but for that you need profiles to be installed on devices. And sometimes that's hard. A lot of times users don't fully understand the implications of installing a profile. They might choose not to do that. So with MDM on by default, without users having to install profiles, as soon as they use G Suite credentials on any Google app, you're going to see their device pop up on this console, and you'll get basic rights on their device, things like account wiping as well as enforcing passcodes. So I have a device. I'm just going to sign up using my G Suite credentials in the regular Gmail app. And I am signed up. I did not have to install a profile. I'm going to refresh the screen. And as it is signing up, we should we'll give it a few seconds. So we'll give it a few seconds to show up. And meanwhile, I'll show you another demo. And we should be able to get back here and see Sam's device is active. The second thing I want to talk about is security health. Now, security health is a pretty cool way to look at security within G Suite. A lot of times, attacks happen due to misconfigurations. It's one of the leading sources of attacks, and we want to prevent that. So with security health, what we're doing is we're going through all the different settings within G Suite, and we're mapping them to Google's best practice recommendations. Now, the settings which match those best practice recommendations get this beautiful green checkbox, and the settings which don't get this gray box along with a recommendation as to why you should change that setting. Now, if you click on this setting, you can directly go to that specific setting and choose whether you want to have that or not. We purposely haven't kept a score around this. We don't have something like a secure score, because at the end of the day, you know your organization's policy is best, and we do not want you to be measured by a score at the end of the day. So I'll take an example of what a very innocuous-looking policy can have, how a very innocuous-looking policy, if it's misconfigured, can impact the organization's security posture. So I have this Hangouts policy, which is the Hangouts out-of-domain warning, and that is turned off. And that can have security implications. So I'm the admin of this domain, Sam, and I've also created this fake account in the name of Sergey Brin. And it has a picture of Sergey at the top as well. He's probably attending an award function or out somewhere. Now, this fake Sergey is going to ping Sam, the admin of Inc42, maybe one of his many companies, and say, I'm on my way to the moon. Can you disable my password challenge? Now, Sam, the admin of Inc42, gets this message with a picture of Sergey, and there's no way for Sam to figure out whether this is the real Sergey or not. And most times, you will just say, yeah, sure. And you've given away the keys to your kingdom, and that's a problem. Now, with security health, we know as we log into the G Suite admin console that this setting is turned off. It's disabled for this domain. Now, when I click on this setting, it directly takes me to that specific setting. And I'm now going to check it where it says warn users when having a Hangouts outside Inc-42. So let me save it. It will take a few seconds to get active. But let's verify that it has become active within security health. So right now, we had a gray checkbox with a recommendation that we should change that setting. And now we are going to go to that specific setting again. And now that setting is turned on. So let me replay this conversation one more time. I'm just going to delete this previous conversation. And now the fake Sergey is going to ping Sam again. Can I get the keys to your kingdom? And the setting isn't active as yet, and so you know it's a real demo. Let me try one more time. Okay. There you go. So it's a real demo. Sergey Brin is outside of ing42.com. So this time you get a warning that this is not the real Sergey, and it's a dead giveaway for an admin to make sure that, look, you're not disabling anybody's password challenge. The next use case I'm going to talk about is how do I help ensure that G Suite satisfies my organizational policies? Now we'll go back to the demo. And the first thing I want to talk about is data regions. So with data regions, you can, as a G Suite admin, you can choose where the data for your G Suite apps should be located, whether it should be globally distributed, as most customers choose, because that reduces the latency, and it's the most effective in terms of making sure that there's max coverage in terms of redundancy. But you can also choose whether your data should be located within the US or within Europe. And today, early in the morning, we announced that backups, any backup we make of your data for redundancy purposes, is also included as part of that regional change we do in terms of locating data. So you can pick data by OUs. For example, in this case, the finance OU is located in Europe, and the HR OU is located in the US. You get these nice dashboards which help you monitor the progress of the data move. So as soon as you make an election, this setting will change, and you can exactly monitor not just based on your full data spectrum, but also based on which particular app has moved geographies. So for example, in this case, all the moves have been completed, but if I change an OU, this percentage will go down and will help you track over the next few days as to what that exact progress of the move is. The next thing I want to talk about is access transparency. So access transparency is a pretty big deal for us. The idea here is that at the end of the day, if we need to access customer data for any reason, and most times it happens because you open a support case, we think it's wise to let you know that we're accessing your data. So now within the admin console, you will be able to get this report saying that Google accessed this data. Where was this data accessed from a Google perspective? Why was it accessed? So in this case, there's a customer-initiated support request with a case number, and then which resources were accessed. And this resource, we're not displaying the exact file name, but you can actually take this file name to the security investigation tool and figure out the specific file which Google accessed. So in general, you have more visibility into why we're accessing data. It's just, we think it's the right way to make sure that customers get the right visibility into how the data is being treated. So in summary, we went through data regions, and we talked about access transparency. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what should I do when I see suspicious activity? So back to the demo. In October last year, we launched the Alert Center. And with the Alert Center, we're surfacing the most important things which we think, as a security admin, you should pay attention to within the admin console. This is available across all SKUs. So within the Alert Center, we see a lot of different alerts which have been generated. There's this leaked password alert, in which case, and in this case, Joe Root, who is an employee at Inc42, his password was found in a publicly posted list of compromised credentials. So we automatically reset that password, and we presented the alert to an admin if they want to take further action. There are also alerts around government-backed attacks. So if we think that there's a specific government-backed group which is trying to get through your organization, and that is very rare, we will present that alert to you. And then there are other alerts around user-reported phishing. One interesting one is a device which has been compromised. Now, let's take a look at this alert. So it looks like a device. Brittany owns this device. This device has been compromised. Now, from within the Alert Center, I can click on Investigate Alert, and that takes me to the investigation tool, where the query is already pre-fed, so you don't have to work around figuring out what exactly is happening behind the scenes. There is a specific event which happened, which resulted in device compromise. So Brittany has an Android phone. The device was rooted for some reason. By experience, we know that a lot of times device compromises happen because of phishing emails. Maybe that email had an attachment, or you clicked on a link and went to a website where you downloaded an APK, for example. So in this case, I can pivot on Brittany to see if Brittany has received any suspicious emails recently. So it looks like Brittany has received 2 emails. It says action required, verify 401k account now. They're coming from Mike Chang at yahoo.com. And these emails had an attachment. These emails were also classified by us as phishing emails, but for whatever reason, Brittany clicked and downloaded the attachment on her phone. Now, here's my concern. Well, Brittany's device is compromised and that's locked down, but Brittany may not be the only person within the organization receiving this email. There may be other people within the organization that have received the same email. So I can pivot on this subject line, and I can see everyone within the organization that has received the same email, and a lot of people have. So I can do a couple of things. I can select all these emails, and I can delete these emails proactively from users' inboxes. Now that's pretty powerful, because if you have thousands of users, within a few clicks, you can scale this change across all user inboxes instantly. I can also pivot this result, and I can disable and suspend these user accounts until I can investigate more. And one of the things I might want to investigate is whether data was exfiltrated outside the organization. And Chad, who's going to come up later, is going to show you that use case. Cool. So in summary, we looked at how a device was compromised and why the device was compromised. And then we figured out that a lot of some phishing emails had come in which weren't just targeting that specific user, but were targeting other users within the organization. And we proactively deleted those emails from users' inboxes. So next up, what is the best protection against phishing, and how do I configure it? Now, this is going to take us to a bunch of announcements we made today around this. So we launched advanced anti-phishing and malware solutions within G Suite. This builds on what we announced last year around advanced phishing protections. These are automatically turned on for all G Suite accounts, unless you've chosen to turn it off. So it's a good idea to make sure it's turned on your account, just in case for whatever reason you turned it off. But in this case, we're protecting against encrypted attachments from untrusted senders. If attachments that are coming in have embedded scripts, we protect against those as well. The new launch is around anomalous attachment types within email. So if you're if as a company you're receiving these weird attachment types, we flag them and we present warning to users. Now you can choose whether we present a warning to a user, we move this email directly to spam, or we quarantine it. And you can do that based on OU as well. There's other stuff we do, which is links and external images. So now we're a lot of times you have these emails with these shortened URLs. We actually now expand these URLs, compare it to the database we have within Safe Browsing, which maps across the world stuff which is happening online in terms of which links are suspicious. We actually protect about 3 billion devices with Safe Browsing. So we expand these URLs to make sure that there's nothing untoward behind these URLs. We're also scanning linked images for malicious content. And all these settings are applied automatically. Within spoofing, there's some pretty cool things we're doing, which is that there's protection against domain-based spoofing and similar employee name spoofing within the organization. What we're doing here is that if someone outside of your organization sends an email to an employee within your organization, and the name that this email is coming from is similar, may not be the same. If it's similar to an employee within the organization, we'll flag it. We'll not say that this is a bad email. We'll just present the user with a warning saying that, look, the email you're getting is from someone whose name is very similar to an employee within the organization. So be careful. And here's how that warning will look like. Sergey pings me all the time, I guess. But here's that warning. Here's how this warning will look like. Be careful with this message. Mike Chang, who has sent this message, is similar to someone within the organization. The other thing we're doing is around security sandboxing. We announced this today morning. Now, what we're doing with this is the attachments you get in various users' inboxes, we're taking those attachments, We're spinning up virtual machines on the go, and we're detonating these attachments within those virtual machines. And we essentially are trying to imitate what a user does if they were to actually open this attachment on, within their machine, which is what we call the security sandbox. So this is available in beta starting today. You can sign up for this beta. And the last thing I want to talk about is security keys. Now, security keys is a version of two-factor authentication which we have. The thing with the security key, which is different from a typical passcode which you get on the phone, is that a typical passcode can still be, an attacker can still use a man-in-the-middle attack technique to get that security code which gets sent on your phone, but not so with security keys. With the security keys, there's an encrypted signature which we generate, which is tied to the website you're on, so it can't be replayed. And it's really powerful. Now, it's a hardware token, but today we announced that you can actually use your Android phone 7.0 and up as a security key. So it just makes deployment much easier for within the organizations. So with that, I want to invite my colleague, Chad Tyler, who leads product management for Security Center, up on stage, and he's going to walk us through a couple of other demos.
Okay, so we're going to walk through a few more scenarios. The first one we're going to cover here is how can we prevent, detect, and remediate data exfiltration from within our organization. So we'll go ahead and switch to the demo here. And what I want to show you, several of the things I'll show you today are actually launches that we've put into beta. We'll try to weave these different demos together so you can kind of follow along on how these pieces fit together and protect you. So we'll start with data loss prevention, which you can now access by going to security, data protection. One of the big things that we're working on in DLP or data loss prevention is unifying the way that you build rules for both Drive and Gmail. And so we want to make that really streamlined so that you can build the same rule to protect against exfiltration of certain patterns through either Gmail or Drive. And this is in beta now, so you can start to see this unified experience when you sign up for beta. And so in this scenario, what we've done is I've come in and I've kind of pre-created a rule around something called Project Utopia. And in our organization, this hypothetical organization, we have a very sensitive project. We named it Utopia. We definitely don't want anything about Utopia leaking outside of the organization. So what we've done is we've come in and we've created this rule. We've set it for the entire organization. We've said if anything shared in Drive, you could also check, sent in Gmail and check that as well. If it contains Utopia in any of the content, I want you to block it from being shared. And so we've gone through, we've created that. It's a fairly simple experience of walking through those different steps and setting up these rules. So now when a user goes to a file that is about Utopia, what they'll see is that the sharing icon is actually changed for them. So they see this shield instead of the normal G Suite sharing icon. And then when they hover over it, it says that the document contains restricted content. And so this is really important because one of the things we're trying to do is help educate your end users as well so that they can help you in the security process. So we try to give them pointers on things that they should be thinking about, things that are potentially sensitive, so that they're not trying to share these things and they're better educated about what things they should not be sharing. If they do go ahead and try to share this, and let's say that we want to share it to anyone on the web and save this, they actually get an error back saying, hey, you can't share this, it's restricted content, so we're not going to allow this to be shared out. So one of the really cool things about data loss prevention is it prevents things from happening. It's not something that goes and cleans it up after. It actually prevents it from being shared in the first place. One of the other big things that we've heard around data loss prevention as we've talked with you, our customers, is that you want more visibility on what these rules are actually doing. You want to better understand when they're triggering, why they're triggering. You want logging around them, and you want it to be easily visible for you to dive in. So what you'll notice with the new experience is there's this option to investigate rule. And if you're familiar with the Security Center, You've probably seen this option in other areas, the dashboards, the alert center. What happens when you click on this is it jumps you into the investigation tool, and it creates the right query to show you log events associated with that data loss prevention rule. And so in this case, we're just querying on the specific drive or rule ID with that rule that we created. And we see here, I used myself as a bad example. A user, Chad Tyler, is trying to share a bunch of stuff externally. They look like they're fairly sensitive stuff, Project Utopia financials, competitive analysis, revenue targets. So the things we probably don't want shared externally about our sensitive project. So we could go a couple of directions with this. Sam showed you how you might dive in and investigate in Gmail and kind of better understand how this user might have gotten compromised. So that's one way we could go with this investigation. The other is we know that these specific files didn't get compromised. They didn't get shared, so data loss prevention blocked that from happening. But this user could have shared other sensitive content. So we'll pivot to Drive, and we'll look at other events where this user was an actor. And then specifically, we'll say, show me when this user changed a file that was internal and shared it externally. And we'll search for this. And so when this comes back, this gives us a better idea of what else this user has been up to. It looks like they've been sharing other files, project differentiation, escalations, financial performance, customer conversations. Again, fairly sensitive looking documents. So what we can do is we can select all of these logs, and then right from the investigation tool, we can come to actions, and we can do things like change the owner of these documents, remove users that have been shared, disable download, print, and copy, or we can dive into this deeper audit file permissions experience. And this gives us a much more granular look at how these documents are currently shared. So I can select any of these, and we can kind of look at who they're shared with. We see here, actually, this is a user from outside of our organization. So if we want to remove them, it's as simple as clicking and removing them there. Or we can select all of these files at once and remove that user by typing their name and hitting remove. We can also come to link sharing, and we see that they're all currently shared publicly. We can easily select all those files and change them to restricted. And so that's one quick way that we're kind of tying together data loss prevention rules with the other information we have coming into the security center. You can easily move from one to another to remediate any exfiltration. And so that's a quick view of how you can prevent using data loss prevention, detect kind of by diving into the logs and pivoting into other data sources, and remediate by going in and removing people that have access that shouldn't. So for the next demo, what we're going to cover is we've kind of remediated this issue, but we don't really want to play whack-a-mole as a security organization. What we want to do is potentially prevent the issues that we've seen in the past so that they don't happen again. And so what we'll do now is within the investigation tool, one of the things that we just launched into beta is what we call activity rules. And so what activity rules allow you to do is come into any query that you've done on log events and create a rule to automate action or alert based on that event happening again. So we'll say, if Chad Tyler is sharing externally, the event, so if they're sharing externally, the event is a change user access. So what we'll do is we'll come to this 3-dot menu, and we'll say create rule. And so this pulls us into a very similar experience to what you saw with data loss prevention. It's kind of the same rule building flow. And we'll call this block external sharing for Chad. And then we'll go to next, and we see that it pulled in our query. So this could be a really complex query that we've put together throughout our investigation. It would pull the whole thing in for you. And then next, we'll add actions to this. And so what this will do at the top is it kind of generates a preview of how often this event has happened, so our query has happened this often, and this is when it's happened. And then we can set a threshold. So we'll say, within an hour, if this user shares more than 5 documents, I want an alert on this, and I want that alert to go to admin at this domain. And so we'll apply that. And so in Drive, we offer alerts. In other data sources like Gmail, users, devices, you can actually perform actions as well. So you could route emails into quarantine or delete emails if they're a threat to your users and you don't want them in their inbox. And so we'll go ahead and review this, and then we can create this rule. And so now this rule is active. We can go and review it. We can also look in the Alert Center. So under Security Alert Center, we can come in, and this will show us anytime any of those activity rules have triggered. So right here we see that this rule that we created, and I created a similar version of it earlier, has triggered. So the same user has shared more than 5 Drive files externally. We could easily set that to 1 if we wanted to. But we get this nice alert letting us know this is also routed to the email of the admins that you specify, so they know about things right when they happen, and they can jump in and fix them, or you can set up those automated actions so that they're taken care of right after the fact. And so right from this alert, you also have that same investigate option. You can jump back into the investigation tool and keep going and keep taking actions to remediate any issues that you find. So that's a quick view of how not only can you prevent, detect, and remediate, but then you can also move back into that prevent option. You can make sure that the things you've already seen don't happen again. So for the next demo, what we'll show you is some of the collaboration features we're starting to work into security. So traditionally, G Suite's really good at helping end users work together and be really effective in getting things done together. But if you look at the way that security admins have to work together across many different products that are out there for them, it tends to be really archaic. It involves taking screenshots of the product or sharing things through chat or through email or trying to maintain the context of what's already been done. It's just not very efficient. And so we're really excited to start to work more G Suite style collaboration elements into the Security Center and other security tools that we have. And so from this investigation we were working on earlier, we'll come back to the same one. We've done all this work. What we can do now is we can actually save this, and we'll call it DLP violations, or whatever we want to, and we can save that. And so this is available to us forever now. It's something we can refer back to. But it also allows us to share this with other admins so that they can see what we've been working on. They can have all the context of the actions we took and make sure that they know exactly what steps might be next. And so in this scenario, let's say that we need to suspend this user that's been sharing externally. We can share this with our colleague, Robin, who is another admin in our organization, and we can say, can you suspend this user? And we'll share that with her as well. And so we'll send that. And so what this looks like now, if I switch to another user, if I switch to Robin's profile here in the other tab, what I see is I actually have an email from that admin that just sent that. So right from here, I can click on Open Investigation, and that takes me to a view of the same investigation. So we see that they started with this rule. They had these various triggers. They pivoted to Drive, and then they took an action to remove the users that shouldn't have been on there. And now right from here, what I can do is I can say, okay, we need to come to this user, and we'll pivot to their user account, and then we will suspend that user. And so it's a really nice way to tie together how admins work and ensure that they have the full context of what should come next. And so from right here, we can go ahead and suspend this user. And I won't do that because it's my account that I'm using right now, and that would be bad for the demo. Okay, so that's kind of a view, and I wanted to put all of those demos together to show kind of how these things can flow into themselves. What we've really tried to do with a lot of the security tools in G Suite is ensure that you're not hitting dead ends. We don't want you to get to a place where you've done a bunch of work and now you have to go to a different tool and you're not sure how to copy all of that information over. We want to make things really quick for you so you can do your jobs, we remove the friction, and we ensure that you can work together. And so that's why I wanted to kind of piece all those demos together for you so you could have a good view of that. The next thing I want to show, I want to switch to another one. So one of the other things that we announced was ContextAware Access. Now, what ContextAware Access allows you to do is set policies based on attributes of users or devices. So you can come in, you can say, this user should have access to Drive only if their device is up to the latest version. And so we'll go ahead and show you kind of what that looks like in practice. And so if we come to Drive right now, you can see that my account has access to Drive. But if we come into ContextAware Access, which is available under Security Settings, this is a new option that's in beta, as you can see. What you can do is you can create access levels. And so you can create these access levels, we'll call this demo, based on various attributes of the IP. So you can set a specific IP or IP range where users should be able to access specific services. You can set these policies based on attributes of the device. So is the device encrypted? Does it have the latest version of Mac OS or Chrome OS? Is it verified? These various policies and attributes that you can use. So you can create these access levels. And then what you can do is you can assign these to specific applications. And currently what we have available is Drive, Gmail, and Keep. So you can create an access level, and then you can assign it to one of these. And you can see that I've applied this Drive access level to Drive itself. And so if we come back to the main page here, and we turn on ContextAware Access, and we might have a propagation delay here, which you've experienced in other parts of the demo. So we'll come here and we'll refresh this, and it's not ready yet. All right. Oh, whoops, it is not on yet. That might help for the demo purposes. So we'll turn that on. We'll wait for a second for it to propagate. I would have sat there and refreshed it for you for a while, but it probably would have gotten boring for you. So hold up. I might be signed out by now. Let me refresh this. One cool feature of this is if you're not signed in, it won't assign policies for your organization. So it's good to always be signed in as an admin, especially when you're doing a demo. Okay, so now I have actually turned it on, and we'll wait for it to propagate for a second here. Sorry for the friction in showing this. Okay, so it actually propagates fairly quickly. We see that now when we try to access Drive, since we're not in the right IP, we actually can't get access to it anymore. We get this message saying, you haven't satisfied all the conditions of what you need to access this specific data source. And so ContextAware Access is a really powerful tool. It's starting to allow you not just apply protections based on the content, but also on the context of where that user is coming from. So ensuring that their device is where you want it to be, ensuring that the user is set up the way they should be, and that they're not accessing from a remote location or an area where you don't want them accessing certain types of data. So for the next and last demo, what we want to show you quickly is how you can set up policies, and we'll show you in Vault this time how you can set up a policy to ensure that stale data is not retained longer than you would like it to be. And so we'll come into the Vault product here. And so this is kind of the landing page for Vault. And so from here, what you can do is you can come to retention. actually, and then we'll go to create rule. And from here, you can pick any of these different data sources that are available in Vault. So in this case, we'll say in Drive, what we want to do is apply this to a specific organizational unit. So our test org uses a lot of sensitive content. We don't want it to be leaked out. We don't want it to be retained too long either. So instead of leaving it there forever, we'll set a policy that when it's been around for a certain amount of time, we'll go ahead and delete it. And then we can set a time frame. So we'll say in this case 365 days. And we want to delete all of these files after that amount of time. And then we can preview that or we can save it. If we preview, that goes ahead and shows us kind of a snapshot view of what this might look like, showing us all of the files that would actually be deleted after this time. So this is a great way to ensure that your organization's set up so that you're not retaining stale data beyond when you want it, so that you're ensuring that you're kind of maintaining the files, maintaining any emails for only as long as it's generating value for your organization.